erotic for me actually involves physical touch.
I think you're talking about like somatic fantasy.
Can we make this a thing?
This, I think we got to look it up, but I think we might have just coined a term.
Hello and welcome to Fuck Yeah, the podcast where we say fuck yeah to fantasies. I am one of your hosts, Sarah, and I am joined by my very stylish co-host, Robin. I love you in a beanie, I gotta be honest.
Thank you. I see beanies as like totally styling.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that.
I really, really like it. And it's like where you can bring in a pop of color.
Yes. Yeah.
And still be super goth.
Yes. Thank you.
It works. It's working.
I feel so seen. Wow. Starting this off nicely. I love that. That's exactly what I do. I bought this electric blue one so that I could have like a little bit of... I've been working on a style since the 2020 days that I call cozy core.
Okay.
Where I'm no longer accepting non-elastic fabrics.
Yeah.
I try to avoid waistbands at all. Yeah. And a lot of fuzzy, soft textures, a lot of like velours and polar fleece and stuff. So I feel like you're picking up on my cozy core. I appreciate it. Yeah.
Yeah. You're rocking it in a way that like, I don't know what it for me, like when I go super cozy, I feel a little frumpy. Mm-hmm. So the fact that you have made cozy stylish, I'm quite impressed.
Thank you. It's all my dreams are coming true right now that you're recognizing this, because I actually put conscious thought into this where I'm like, how can I look good in cozy things?
Yeah.
And a lot of times it's like layering and little pops of color and stuff like that. So thank you, Sarah.
Yeah. I had an experience last night, and then I swear I care about your fuck yeah. I care about you.
Kind of a fuck yeah for me right now. This is great.
So we went to the Kills last night. Like we're just seeing a lot of music right now. But so I have some food sensitivity stuff. So last night I made this like delicious meal before we went out, and my mom had recently told me like Trader Joe's now has really good vegan pepperoni. You got to go get some. So I did. And as I was making dinner, like I ate a couple slices of the pepperoni, and all of a sudden my stomach distended. Like I looked pregnant.
Whoa.
This happens to me periodically where like something will hit my stomach in this way where it's so extreme. It's like I grow 2 or 3 sizes. So we're like then trying to get ready for the show. And I'm like, what the actual fuck am I going to wear? Because my stomach is so distended. A of all, I can't have anything tight around it.
Yeah.
B of all, none of my like cute show dresses are, I mean, I'm looking pregnant and like, that's fine, but like I don't exactly want to be like with a cocktail like pregnant on the dance floor. So I put on like my coziest, just like simple black cotton dress, but I wore a fishnet bodysuit underneath it. And all of a sudden I was like, ding, 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 ding.
Yes.
Ding. This is cozy and it looks totally appropriate for a rock show.
You did it. You did cozy core, and it probably provided a little bit of support for your poor belly too.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I'm also just like fluctuating like nuts right now because of all of the, my body size and shape is fluctuating a lot. I think maybe because of hormonal imbalances. So it's just like having to get really creative with the clothes that are in my closet sometimes. And last night, I had a win.
I love that when you can put things together in a new way. Yeah. And also I do think like cozy core or basics, you just need like, you accessorize it well.
Yes.
And you elevate the basics, and, you know, like I'll wear these like fuzzy teddy bear black pants with boots and a chain belt.
Yes.
And now it works, you know, and you're like wearing sweatpants to a goth club or to like a kink event. You know, and I'm like, yes, all my dreams coming true.
Yes. I just sized up on my like faux leather Spanx pants because they're so great. But it was just like my old size wasn't fitting me. So I was just like, fuck it. Just have 2 pairs.
Yeah.
Multiple sizes. And now I'm like, oh, having this basic back in my life. And it is pretty damn cozy.
Yeah.
But it looks great with like everything.
Clothes should work for us.
Yeah.
Not the other way around.
Yes. That's a callback. A good callback. Okay. What's giving you a fuck yeah?
Okay. I am so excited because finally my birthday gift for you arrived and it is sitting right next to you. So my fuck yeah is this gift and I would love for you to open it.
Oh my gosh. I love it. It is wrapped in like a very cozy fabric in a fabulous color. So we are like bringing the theme around. What is this a fuchsia?
Yes.
Electric purple?
Yes. I love using old like scrap fabrics as wrapping.
Oh, it's gorgeous. It is a vulva with a removable clitoris. We're going to have to put this up on the talk. If it still exists by the time this episode airs. It's so beautiful. It's like velvet and it's in earthy tones, which feel very me. And it's called the Vajoya. You think that's how you spell it?
Possibly. It's from an Etsy craftsperson in Poland. Oh. And I believe, isn't it perfect in the way the clitoris just kind of pops in and then it'll stay in to the exterior vulva.
What a perfect instructional tool too. I mean, it's beautiful. It's the vulva of my people. Do you know that my family is from Poland?
Oh, no, I didn't know that.
Yes.
Yeah, I was like, I don't know what that means.
Making me proud.
And so the shop's name is Kokieka, Kokieca. I think it's Kokieka. And you can find them on Etsy or same name on Instagram as well. But I just loved her stuff. And when it arrived, I was like, wow, the craftsmanship is spot on. It's really well done. It's like compact in a way that's very teachable and visual. And I did notice the colors. I was like, these are Sarah colors.
No, the colors are so great. One thing I do want to point out that I think is kind of funny. This clit is erect as hell. Yeah. It is like way far below the like hood of the clitoris. And it is just like, I am so primed. You've built all the layers of sensation. I've got all the blood flow going. Oh my God, it's beautiful. Thank you.
I'm glad you like it. You're welcome. You're welcome. Happy birthday.
Supporting crafters around the world.
Yeah, and pleasure educators at the same time.
Yeah, this is so great.
Hooray.
Thank you.
Fuck yeah.
Well, I'm excited about today's episode. We haven't done like a you and me episode in a while. And we've been all season wanting to talk about fantasies and keep trying to find like the right person to talk about fantasies with. And we are the right people.
I think so.
To talk about fantasies.
I have a lot to say.
I can't.
All right.
You've been on such a journey.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm glad that we did wait because even a couple weeks ago, I would have less to say than I do now. Like I'm in a new space with my journey. So I would like to talk about that. And I also came across something recently, and I have a poem that I would like to read. And this is less to do with fantasies of a erotic nature and more to do with how we kind of turn people into a fantasy person. And this is about a particular type of fantasy person that I connected with a lot. But anyway, so
do you want to start with the poem?
I almost want to end with it because it's a little more like deep and it's a little more emotive, I think. And I think we should start with the frosting and then work our way down into the...
Yeah.
I don't know what metaphor I'm coming up with, but work deeper into the cupcake.
Yeah. Get deep into that cupcake.
Yeah. Because also, what do you bring? You have something you want to talk about, right?
Yeah. I have... So what's interesting for me is that I have a weird personal relationship with fantasy. Because it's not like I don't fantasize, but it's almost like I go through phases of fantasizing. And like, I'm not really in one right now. Although I do have some interesting like life fantasies, which I think are still a thing, right? I think it's still the same part of the brain. But I did want to return to the book, The Erotic Mind. I think that this book actually came up like really early on in the podcast. Sex Nerd Sandra
That's right.
brought it up as like, for them, the two most formative books were Come As You Are and The Erotic Mind by Jack Morin.
Mm-hmm.
And he has a whole section that's kind of interesting. And I'm wondering, do you want to start there?
I think that's a great place to start.
Okay. So he writes about the erotic mind, as the title of the book would suggest, but like where kind of the roots of fantasy, desire, these sorts of things come from. So that's really what this whole book is about. It does recognize Freud and like what is kind of interesting to pull from Freud and what was really sort of bastardized because of the context of that like really sexually repressed society. Mm-hmm. But he has an equation that he calls the erotic equation.
Okay.
And so I think it's helpful. It is attraction plus obstacles equals excitement. So I want to read you some stuff, but do you have any kind of initial impressions when you hear that?
My initial impression is that this is like the tension.
Yes.
This is the crux of the tension that we talk about a lot in like kink contexts or even like role playing, but even in bondage concepts, is that it's all about keeping that tension so that it's almost like it's the plot. It's kind of like the thing that you have to accomplish. It's the accomplishment in a way.
Yes. Yeah. So like, I think you just got to the heart of the matter. So I'm going to skip around a little bit before I read from his book, because when you look at the research on fantasies, like fantasies are pervasive. Something like 95% of adults fantasize. Not necessarily wanting to act on those fantasies, but it's like an inherent kind of part of our brain of like igniting imagination and thinking about the impossible.
Yeah.
So when you look at the most common fantasies, I looked this up.
Can't wait.
Group sex, rough sex, forced sex, for men, anal sex, gay sex, public sex, cheating, having sex with an unknown person. But you know what's made me a little sad?
What?
In one study, like the number 3 most common fantasy that was cited was passion, romance, and intimacy.
Yeah.
So when you think about it from that tension or obstacle standpoint, it's like really actually a thing that is lacking or that is unattainable for you. And then that becomes the fodder for fantasy. So things that are either super taboo, right? So that's why you see men fantasizing about anal sex at a higher rate than women do. That's why Republicans cheat or cite having infidelity fantasies at a higher rate than progressives do.
Really?
Yes. Oh. So it's like, it's what the social norm is, whatever your context is, like something that exists outside of that. But then you think about people fantasizing about passion and intimacy and romance, and that's like an indication of a real lack of that.
Dude, girl, that's what fucked me up about those boyfriend ASMRs.
Yeah.
Is that it's really the crux of the things that I am like missing.
Yes.
You know, or that I was wanting out of my relationship that I wasn't able to get.
Yes.
You know? This is very interesting. I have some thoughts about this, but I want to hear
Okay, let me read to you from The Erotic Mind.
Okay.
Although sexual desire and arousal can be stimulated by all sorts of people and situations, your most passionate responses spring from the interaction of 2 competing forces. First, an attraction pulls you toward the object of your desire, and you want the desired one to see qualities in you that are worthy. Suddenly or gradually, your fascination comes up against one or more obstacles to overcome. The second requirement for a truly compelling, erotic response. The erotic equation, which I'm going to repeat, is attraction plus obstacles equals excitement. Shows us why peak eroticism is rarely tidy, static, or predictable. It helps us fully grasp what we've always known. The erotic experience, by its very nature, is shaped by the push-pull of opposing forces and is therefore energetic, interactive, and potentially dangerous. We are the most intensely excited when we are a little off balance, uncertain, poised on the perilous edge between ecstasy and disaster. We humans want some restrictions to push against. We just don't want them to be so harsh that they choke off our sexuality entirely.
It's interesting because at the same time, I agree with it. When was this written?
That is a great question. There are a few things that feel a bit dated in this book. So hold on, let me find the publication date for you. 1995.
Okay. I feel like all of that I agree with. And at the same time, I feel like I am working to deconstruct from that entire kind of model.
Yes.
Because it feels very much within a hyper-controlled society, a society that builds shame around sexuality, that pits people against each other based on their assigned gender at birth. Like a lot of times the framing of like hetero relationships is this kind of power struggle.
Yeah.
And the idea around heteronormative sexuality often is like taking something rather than creating a pleasurable experience for everyone. Like I think like 5 years ago or 10 years ago, I could talk about all of that within that kind of structure. But as I've been
believe it
and believe it, and I still believe it, I think that now that would exist for me in a different space.
So a couple of thoughts that I had when reading this, I was like, yes, this is true. And other things are true.
Yes,
so
and.
like you've got the work of Esther Perel, who talks about mating in captivity and how like when you become so known to your lover that there is an element of eroticism that comes out of it. So like then that kind of opens up the question of like, well, how does role play function then? How does like some compartmentalization of like all of the roles that you play within your partner's life and like, you know, carving out a space for eroticism. But then I also think of Emily Nagoski's newest book, Come Together, the art and science of lasting relationships, or I don't know exactly the tagline of it. But, you know, when she's talking about pleasure is the measure, and actually you've got to sort of throw out all of the equations and the scripts and find those authentic connection points, intimacy points, points of eroticism with your partner, and that's going to like evolve and change over time. So like, I think that this is part of the story. And I actually think it's a really helpful part of the story when people are trying to understand, why does this thing hold appeal for me?
Yeah.
Why am I attracted to unattainable people? What is it about like the objects of my desire having qualities that are not good for me? I think it's super helpful in breaking down and understanding that that might be somewhat part of our nature, but that there's other ways to like authentically connect and possibly even intentionally play with these elements with consent and so forth, so that you can like tap into some of the eroticism that can come out of the tension points.
Yeah.
But without actually having to live in tension.
Yes. Yes. And I think a big part of it is like all of those things, they live within the structures that we live in. So as I've been deconstructing my internalized misogyny, my internalized homophobia, and the amount of grooming from the culture and my family and everything around what sex even is and how male pleasure I was taught to, like, I was so male pleasure oriented that I would watch porn and be identifying with the men. And I think that's partly a queerness also, but it was like on this level of where everything was centered around that. And the more degrading it could be to the women involved, the higher that kind of eroticism. Like I would joke with a few friends from the pleasure chest. We would joke about how like, oh yeah, you're watching this porn. And then the moment you orgasm, you're like, oh, what's wrong with these people? You know, like you get kind of disgusted, not necessarily like with the people, but just like the whole situation. Like, what am I even watching? You know, and is this like within my ethics? Basically. And so those things weren't lining up. And so in that case, I feel like it's really great to have these things that explain like, oh, it's the tension and all this stuff. But also it was that I had a lot of internalized misogyny. And also I was, you know, grew up in a world and saw a lot of imagery around sexuality that was 99% derogatory towards women and objectifying and like all this stuff. So I was really taught that that is sex. Right?
Right.
And then on top of that, through like whatever traumas I experienced, I was a master dissociator that I only realized that in the last like couple years. And I'm still unfolding how much I dissociate. Like it's incredible. And I was a master role player to the point where I didn't know how not to role play.
Yeah.
And this was like an incredible skill and I got a lot of joy from it.
Yeah.
But it's also not allowing me to go into like a deeper space, you know? So then I did all that deconstruction around my masturbation where I stopped, you know, I was watching like non-sexual like television while masturbating to get down into the pleasure of it. And then I got to the point where I didn't have to have distractors on to stop me from going to misogynistic fantasies. I just wanted a break from it, you know? And then I was telling you how like now I don't know where to go. And then recently I've been wanting to orient towards female pleasure, because I've never built that muscle.
Yeah.
And so
when you say that, do you mean your own pleasure?
I mean both.
Or like you want to be experiencing your own pleasure, you want to give pleasure to other like cis women, or just femme identities?
Femme identities, all of the above.
Yeah.
You know, everything, yes. So it was partly like I've been opening up myself of like, I know I have like attractions towards women and trans women and trans men. I have attractions towards everybody.
Yeah.
But I've really been so focused on this male pleasure thing and not realizing that that was kind of like all of the crux of eroticism and how fucked up that is, you know, and I don't like that. So I changed it, right? So now I'm building up this thing of I've been eroticizing my own body. And I told you about, I don't know if I mentioned on the podcast, but it's like I have boobs now and like this, I'm attracted to myself.
Yeah.
And so I've been trying to build that a little bit. And part of what gave me permission is from Pleasure Activism. There's one essay in there. I mean, that book's amazing. But one essay is talking about eroticizing yourself, like not just masturbating, but like having sex with yourself.
Yeah.
You know, and seeing yourself. It's like a whole, I was like, it made me glitch when I read it like 2 years ago. And now I'm finally getting to a point where I can do that kind of thing. I don't know how to talk about it. Like I'm having a lot of erotic fantasy around women and I'm building up that muscle because I feel like I was denied that in my environment as I was coming into my sexuality. So now I'm trying to build it in this way so that I can embrace female pleasure as well.
I think there's something interesting about what you're saying, which goes against the grain a little bit in terms of, I think, how people orient around their fantasies, which is like you're describing essentially like an inherited set of fantasies.
Yeah.
That then you had to kind of go like, oh, are these mine? Right. And like I've gone through that process as well, like around rough sex in particular.
Right.
Like that is like a core of my sexuality. And I have to regularly kind of check in of like, do I genuinely like this, want this, or is this somehow like something that has just kind of permeated me from the culture. I keep coming to the place of like, in the right context, I love rough sex. And I think part of that context is dependent on trust with a partner. And when I say trust, I don't even necessarily mean like in the past that I've needed there to be like a really in-depth relationship there, but there just has to be like a foundational kindness and like decent communication. And then it's like, yes, I want this. But when you're trying to source your authentic fantasies or like be in relationship like with your truest desires, something that I think gets lost is the fact that we can condition ourselves erotically, right? I mean, I dated someone years ago who had almost exclusively dated mask people and was actively like, there are certain dynamics in these relationships that don't work for me. It seems to be a through line, like the masculinity of it all is the through line. And I'm like actively seeking out attraction, desire, fantasy, exploration with femmes. And like, they were really upfront about that. And of all that was fantastic, right? To not have to have sort of my insecurity around like their dating and sex history kind of be a dark cloud over the dynamic.
Yeah.
But also like, okay, we are like actively engaging and kind of reorienting your eroticism towards something different and like exploring different dynamics as a result of that. And it's like any kind of conditioning that you do, like a lot of what we fantasize about is learned in a way because the taboo or the tension in most cases has been handed to us either from our family, from a religious institution, from the cult, like the mixed messages around sexuality in our culture, from like early erotic feeling that we had and that piece of media or that person that was attached to. So the thing is like all of that is learned.
Yes.
And so it can be unlearned and you can kind of reorient yourself with some intentionality.
Yeah. And it's working.
Yeah. It's
like,
amazing.
that's what's so great is like, I'm reorienting my fantasies towards what lines up with me ethically and spiritually and creatively and communally or whatever. Because I really do believe that I was groomed by culture and my family to to center men in their pleasure above all else. Yeah. And that their attraction to me is pleasure enough. You know, that all I need is that they want me. You know, it's like I would be literally.
Say that. Say that again, because I feel like this is a really important point that like a lot of people need to deconstruct. Yeah. That idea that like, because I think I've fallen prey to that as well, of like someone is attracted to me, therefore I must reciprocate. And then you like orient your desires around that attraction that you're like, I'm supposed to have this, or
it's like the male gaze times 100, you know, where I'm having sex with them, feeling their pleasure. None of it's about my pleasure. I can orgasm because they're getting off. And there's like a certain level that, you know, that's great. It's like you're able to, what was it like, when we were talking with Mike with the thruples, like
compersion. Yes.
I think it's great to be able to feel somebody else's joy and orgasm and all of this stuff. But if that's the only thing, and if it's widespread, like once you start deconstructing like the patriarchy and the misogyny that's in your actual life, like I just keep digging and I'm like, no, like, and it's not that I don't ever want to engage with men again or ever want to like have joy in their pleasure, but for real. And I think for a lot of, especially like hetero women, you don't know the difference between their pleasure and their attraction for you and your own pleasure and attraction for them. it's fucked up. And that is just how skewed things are in the society towards men's pleasure. And so I'm trying to deconstruct from that. And I can feel it working. It makes me think of, I think what got me caught on this a little bit, like planted the seed, was Emily Nagoski's part of Come As You Are, where she's talking about the mice that learn to eroticize the smell of lemon.
Yes.
You know, and like how fetishes can form and stuff like that. And it's like, well, I'm ready to orient myself around female pleasure and to see where that takes me. And that, you know, this also wasn't a totally conscious choice. I got to that flat line kind of space where I was waiting to see what presents itself. And it's really furries and women. Which, by the way, I just want to show you really quick. I'm working on my costume for the drag show. And I got these claws on fucking Amazon. You know, I know I'm not supposed to.
Everyone is going to be this weekend at Precinct on it's Sunday, right? Or
it's on Saturday.
It's on Saturday.
The 23rd at Precinct downtown. Doors open at 1:30.
I'm so sad.
Show starts at 2:30. But I got these rings that are like glittery claws, but I also wanted gloves because it's a drag show and I want to be fancy. And I was worried the rings would fall off during the performance. So what I did was I cut holes. I got these mesh gloves that are going to match my outfit. And then these like claw rings that fit on just the tips of your fingers that have rhinestones on the top. And I cut holes in the tips and pushed the nails through.
Yeah.
And then I put a glue on the top where the mesh meets the claws. And so now they're stuck to this. But here, I'm going to come and claw you a little bit.
Oh my gosh, this is amazing. My favorite thing that I have in my sex kit is the finger fork.
Yes.
Like, I love using it. It's really fun also because people think it's going to be scary because it sort of looks a little medieval.
Yeah.
And then you can like create so many sensations. I have actually a question. I have two questions for you, but like, or I guess for us to discuss, like, sensory stuff for me. Because so when we were thinking about talking about fantasies, I was like, gosh, what do I fantasize about these days? And this is like, we'll get to this in a minute, because really my fantasies right now are just like, what is a way for me to go and sit on a boat and suntan naked? Like legit, like that's the shit I'm fantasizing about.
You have like self-care vacation fantasies.
Yes.
I love it.
But like when I look back at, you know, I'll use past sex experiences as fodder sometimes for either masturbation, or if I'm like engaged, if I like kind of like plateau or perhaps like get in my head for a minute during sex, like I have a few moments that I can recall that get me totally like back into my body. But it's all very sensory stuff. Like I can recall like exactly like what certain things felt like and the full visual of what was happening and like the excitement that I kind of felt around it. Or like there was this trip that Andrea, it wasn't even a trip really, but we did like a sex night or two, I think in Topanga, like really early in our relationship. And it turned out that the place that we rented, it was so amazing. She had installed a hammock that went the full length of the room. And she had a wall of mirrors, like her whole closet was mirrors. So you know that we just fucked in that hammock like all weekend long and watched ourselves. Like it was just like all of the elements were so perfect because there was the visual of us fucking. And then, but the sensation of like being in a hammock and swaying and having that weightlessness while experiencing sexual pleasure is like that to me, I can recall or reflect on. Like it's sort of become a fantasy of its own, even though it was a thing that actually happened for me. But I don't really know where and especially like when I look into fantasy, like does that even exist in the fantasy space? Because this is where there's a gap for me, because so much of what is really erotic for me actually involves physical touch.
I think you're talking about like somatic fantasy.
can we make this a thing?
This, I think we got to look it up, but I think we might have just coined a term. But it's making me feel like from the book that you're reading, that you were reading earlier, it has like a fair amount of like within the cultural norms and kind of from a more male perspective, or from someone more like me who's very dissociated. You know,
or maybe it's like kind of an academic. It's like
it's more heady.
I'm like outside looking in, trying to analyze this and understand.
Yeah. But I feel like it comes from this very brain place. And there's been such a cultural shift, and in our lives personally, around getting more into the body and being more embodied. And I think you're a much more naturally embodied person than I am, for example.
Right.
You know, I'm like trying to get back in it, and you're like you really exist in your body on so many levels.
Yeah.
You know, and so I feel like it's almost like you're able to use these bodily memories of these physical experiences, and your mind is able to like kind of click your whole body back into that memory willingly.
That's so interesting. Yeah, because I mean, even when I was like, what are some of my current fantasies right now? And it is like, I remember a time that we went out on a boat for a friend's 40th birthday, and the sun was like hitting our bodies. We like were all topless and totally freaked out the boat captain. But like, I can go back to that place of like feeling the sun, the heat of the sun, the coolness of the wind, like not being fully naked in that memory. But like, I then can insert, like, I want to be fully nude. I want to be on a moving boat. Mm-hmm. I want to not be seasick. So I definitely in this fantasy have Dramamine. Like, I want to be like soaking in this like luxurious experience. Yeah. And it's like I can physically feel it. Or even when I think of like floating on a pool in extreme heat, and I've got like the coolness of the pool on my feet, and like some sort of beautiful setting around me that I can kind of fill in the blanks on.
Yeah.
Like these are sort of these are my fantasies.
Okay. There's 3 things here, and I'm going to try to be able to remember all 3 of them.
Okay.
One is, I think you have erotic somatic memory that you can call on. That's when you're calling on a specific thing that happened, and you're using that to juice a situation. That I think is probably a little different from fantasy. That's an erotic memory. But if you then take that erotic memory or those erotic sensations and start morphing it into desires that you have, so you're going to take it and change it, then that's a fantasy, I think.
Yes.
But like your own way of doing somatic erotic fantasy. So it's a full body fantasy that you're not just experiencing in your mind and your genitals. And then, I can't believe I made it to the 3rd one without forgetting.
Yay, good job.
Then I think there's active fantasizing, which is different from a fantasy, where you're in the moment using your erotic memory to create a fantasy in that moment. So that's like the verb fantasizing. You know, anyway, those are the 3 things that I heard you talking about that I think we could probably name to be able to understand a little better.
Yeah, I like those distinctions. I also like the idea of sort of taking that erotic somatic memory that you just named, and then actually sort of putting it into action, not by, you know, renting a boat and going out and being naked and, you know, then experiencing pleasure or whatever, but like actually then being intentional about, okay, let's drop into this moment and let me see where it takes me.
It's like you're mixing visualizing with fantasy.
Yeah.
And maybe, I think if you threw manifesting in there, then that's some witchy shit.
Well, yeah. You could then do some sex magic with it.
Yeah.
Where like you have this visual, you let yourself really get into a space with it. And then like, I mean, there's a technique for manifesting where you make a sigil. So a sigil is like look it up, I guess, actually. It's
a symbol.
It's going to take too long for me to explain what precisely a sigil is, SIGIL, but you can look it up. It's a symbol, but you can make your own. There's like runes are essentially sigils, where you like put your desire, the thing you want to manifest, or it could be joy, right? Is the thing. And so then you create the symbol around it. And as you're masturbating, you focus on the symbol, and while you're orgasming, keep your focus on the symbol. And it's supposed to help kind of bake that intention into your subconscious. I know that now we're sort of like outside of the space of fantasy.
We always end up here.
But I love this idea of like, you know, whatever you're, you know, say you're wanting to like rewire around your fantasies. And then you like create some symbol around that and then actually incorporate it into your sexual practices. And now you're doing sex magic. Y'all.
Yeah. You know, we're always like 2 degrees away from sex magic, I feel like. So.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Huh.
We got so deep. I feel like we made like some good we need to be in conversation about these ideas more often. I love this so much.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think also like one other thing I was sort of curious about is people and fantasy. So like people as fantasy.
Oh, yeah.
I wonder if you have, I mean, I think that that's like the whole cult of celebrity, first of all. Like part of why we obsess over celebrities, that they kind of embody this thing that we desire, whether it is like how we want to live our life or their style or whatever.
Like how we project ourselves onto people. And celebrities, it's so easy because we only know a little bit about them and then we fill in all the blanks.
Yes. Do you have, because you're like in this exploration right now of like really being interested in reorienting your desires from a certain type of person to like a new type of person, or maybe even just like a new dynamic, it sounds like, really.
Yes. And so I'm so glad you brought this up.
Oh, great.
I learned a new term recently from fucking TikTok, of course. And it got in my ear, and then I kept seeing more things about it. And then finally someone on TikTok read this poem about it. And have you heard of the Manic Pixie Dream Girl trope?
No, I have not.
So this is like a critic, maybe like early 2000s, identified this as a trope in movies, but it's basically like a Zoe Deschanel type of character, or it's basically a female character that is there to kind of wake up the main male character, intrigue him, show him that he can have like more fun and more creativity and, you know, get out of his boring job and like run through a field. But she also has this kind of like, he wants to save her from her life. She has some mental illness stuff. She does embarrassing things. Like there's a lot of like Kirsten Dunst and, there's a lot of that character. Like, I can't remember any actors' names right now.
No, you just came up with 2. I'm impressed.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense, right? So I've been hearing about this and I was like kind of identifying with it. I'm like, yeah, that's fucked up. But this is something that the tropes kind of act out in our lives. And this is related to the pick me girl thing that I brought up. Yep. I think last season, where that term really slapped me across the face because I was doing pick me girl type of things. And this is basically like a variation on pick me girls. And what they were saying on TikTok also is that this trope often is what autistic women get put into, particularly like conventionally attractive autistic women get put into this manic pixie dream girl type of space in like hetero kind of relationships sometimes.
And the way that it plays out in pop culture is that as soon as this character has the purpose of saving a man, then they're okay. But
then the woman disappears usually.
Okay.
Because she's not someone that you actually want to be with because she's a little too weird and a little too crazy. Okay. But she does shake them up so that they can like become a more, so they go through growth.
To be.
And it's still so male oriented, right? So Olivia Gatwood, wrote this poem a couple years ago, and this poem just stabbed me in the heart. Manic Pixie Dream Girl says, "Have you heard this record?" Manic Pixie Dream Girl says, "Let me save you with this record. Let me put the headphones on for you and smile while you listen. Cut to your point of view. Watch me smile while you listen. Hear that? That's the sound of you becoming a better person. I'm going to paint a picture of a bird on your beige wall without your permission, and you're going to love it. And you thought you hated birds. See me encouraging you to take risks? Manic Pixie Dream Girl wants you to do something you've never done before, like go swing dancing or smile. You want to know my name? You never call me by it anyway. If I had to guess, I would probably be a season or after a dead actress you loved as a child. But this isn't about me. This is about you and your cubicle job, your white bedroom, your white Honda, your white mother. Manic Pixie Dream Girl says, I'm going to save you. Says, don't worry, you're still the lead role. This is your love story about the way I teach you to live. Everything you know about me, they will learn when it is projected onto you. Watch the way you pick up my bad habits and make them look good. Manic Pixie Dream Girl talks too much, says bad words out loud and cries at the commercials. That makes me a funny woman, right? The kind people like to laugh at? It's easy to root for you when I act like this. So disagreeable. Such a manic dream girl. You're almost broken accessory. Manic Pixie Dream Girls say, let's play make-believe with my body. I'll be a vintage dress in an empty prescription bottle. A good girl just bad enough. A burp and a curtsy. Let me be not too pretty. Hair fried from all that pink dye. Sex when you need it. Puppet when you're bored. Let me build myself smaller than you. Let me apologize when I get caught acting bigger than you. Let me always wait for this. Let me work for this. The convenient thing about being a magical woman is that I can be gone as quickly as I came. And when you are a whole person for the first time, the movie is over. Manic Pixie Dream Girl doesn't just go on. There's no need for her anymore. Manic Pixie Dream Girl is to Dream Girl, and you just woke up. Once I told you I was afraid of my father, and for a moment, I looked so human, the audience lost interest. You saw the crow's feet on the sides of my eyes and a small chip on my front tooth. I looked just like everyone else.
You know what that makes me think of? I mean, in relationship to this conversation, it makes me think lots of things about, patriarchy and the role of women, particularly in media, and like how, women really can't be imperfect beings. We've got to, I think the whole trad wife thing that's happening right now is like a really great, like another kind of version of this, right? It's like women exist in service to masculinity. And men right now are using like their perfect little wives as a way to show other men like you can only be a true man if you have your perfect little wife. But so like they are a symptom of the same kind of cultural thing. But it also in relationship to fantasies and desires makes me think of that like when we are talking about tension.
Yeah.
And when you have attraction to say someone that is unattainable or really challenges like your family's ethics and ethos and like what they have imagined for you. Like these types of attractions are really common. And within them is the projection of you are the object of my desire. Therefore, I will put these attributes onto you and I will present myself in a way that also seemingly makes me desirable to you. And then you're sort of trapped in roles.
Yeah.
It's almost like doing extended role play within the relationship. And you can't really sustain it.
No, you cannot.
Yeah.
You cannot.
It can be super hot.
Yes.
To explore and fun, but it isn't rooted in authentic desires. It's rooted in projection and fantasy exploration, but without being like straight up about it.
Yeah, it boxes people in. And I feel like I've, in almost all of my relationships, have been the Manic Pixie Dream Girl for people.
Yeah.
And you know, men in particular, of like bringing this light into their life, a lot of newness, a lot of freedom, a lot of things that they've never done before. They try with me for the first time, and like, you know, getting their first, it's this thing that I've talked about with a lot of other like people that have done sex work or pole dancing or been a dominatrix. It's like that draws them to you.
Yes.
And then at a certain point, there's a shift and that pushes them away.
Yeah.
You know,
or they want you to change.
Right. They don't want it anymore. So you get to this point where you're like, well, am I a fantasy or am I a person?
Yes. Yeah.
You know, your humanness really gets in the way.
Well, I kind of want to say something about that. And I wasn't sure if it would weave in anywhere, but like Andrea existed for me as a fantasy person.
Yeah.
For a long time. Right. And like a fantasy that I didn't really let myself explore very much, but like was kind of constantly in front of my face because she was around. So then making the transition to like having sex with my fantasy.
Yeah.
It was like, whoa. I mean, so that was why like things like watching us have sex. I enjoy being a voyeur in the sex that we're having.
Yeah.
And the nature of our relationship shifted dramatically. And also she became a whole person. And so like to sort of tap into the fantasy person is more of like a role play now almost than it like who she is in my life.
Right.
The sex that we have, like while there are some remnants, it's almost like the relationship had to do a complete shift for us to become like full people to each other.
Yes.
And I will say, like, as a result, we don't fuck like we used to. And like, I think my younger self would have really struggled with that. Like, there must be something wrong with the relationship if we can't sustain that type of sex. But it's like, no, actually, like, the relationship went from fantasy space into like through many evolutions to where it's now like a really grounded, supportive relationship.
Yeah. It's making me think I learned a term recently called Cathexis.
Ooh, okay.
Okay, so there's Cathexis, and then there's love, and then there's care. So Cathexis is actually what we mainly think of as being in love. It's the love for the way somebody's makes you feel. Yes. That's Cathexis. I love the way I feel when I'm around you. I love the way we fuck. I love being with you and holding hands.
Yeah.
Love, on the other hand, is, and this is only because we use the word love for fucking everything, right?
Yes.
So the distinguishing point around in this context for love is really caring about another person's well-being outside of how they make you feel. You know, so it's about wanting to care and wanting for them to grow spiritually and in their selves. And so I feel like you're kind of talking about those two things. It's like the Cathexis is like the new relationship energy, which can come and go. It's not just new relationship energy, but it's all about that hormones and adrenaline. And I just love being with you and you make me feel so good. And that's a little bit in the fantasy space as well. Yes. And then the love part is being there day after day, caring about this person, providing care for them so that they can provide you with more good feelings, but because you want to see them as an individual flourish.
Oh my gosh. I think I've kept entire relationships in the Cathexis
100%. We all have. We haven't had this delineation. And I just learned this from fucking TikTok again. They can't ban this. All of my growth is going to halt. Like, what am I going to read books again? So, but it's like, yeah, they were talking about cathexis and it fucking blew my mind. And they were saying in that most of our relationships are cathexis. And this is why they don't necessarily last, because it is not sustainable and other people aren't there just for you to feel good.
Yeah. Well, and it is impossible for someone else to be a primary source of you feeling good or consistently make you feel good unless they're entirely suppressing their own needs, desires, etc. And that brings us back to the patriarchy, misogyny, and what we see a lot is women are in service of men, and you are desirable as long as you are fulfilling the desires, the needs for your partner.
Even rom-coms, all of that stuff, like cathexis, it's cathexis, cathexis.
And it's a good vocal warm-up word as well.
Cathexis. Yes. Wow. All right. We went into it.
Yes. Yeah. Oh my gosh. I love it. This is so great. I learned things.
Likewise.
Robin, I have a segment for you that I'm really excited about.
Yay.
I'm going to call it The More You Fucking Know.
The more you fucking know.
Okay, we have not talked about gay animals
this
in a
season.
Long time.
Right. That's one of my favorite topics, so I'm excited.
So I had to work it in. I, in fact, bought this book called Queer Ducks and Other Animals, The Natural World and Animal Sexuality.
What?
Because I just figured it would be ripe with information that you would love. And you know what? We can use some good news. And so I picked a real fun, heartwarming animal sexuality story to tell.
I'm just going to comment real quick that my excitement over this is really letting me know. I think this is one of my special interests where anytime I'm always happy. Any time of day, tell me about a queer animal. Let's do it.
Yeah. And I, to be fair, I did think about the sharing about the observation of sexual behavior between the two male humpback whales just came out because off of the coast of Hawaii, they observed penetration between humpbacks for the first time ever. Typically, mating between humpbacks happens really deep in the ocean. Turns out that this penetration was between two male humpbacks. So the first observed penetration is between two male humpbacks. Here's why I chose not to make this the main focus.
Okay.
Is because, and this is also reflected in the story I am going to tell you, animals engage in sexual behavior for a variety of reasons. And that's why it's really interesting to observe animal behavior, because it does combat this idea that sex is just for procreation, because we see animals engaging in sex for practice, for pleasure, for procreation, but also for dominance. So what was happening, what the scientists actually think was happening in this interaction off the coast of Hawaii between these two male humpbacks is that one of them was dying. And the other male humpback was engaging in dominance behavior. And so it wasn't the heart. Because, if you read the New York Post article about this, it's like, yay, gay sex between humpbacks. So I actually went and read the scientists, what they published from their research. And they have, and I encourage people to look it up. There's really interesting links to other studies that have been done and other observations that have happened in the wild. It's not that there isn't interesting information that came out of this interaction. It just wasn't, a heartwarming, heartfelt.
It wasn't the gay love story we were hoping for.
It was not the gay love story we were hoping for.
There wasn't heart bubbles everywhere.
So the story I am going to tell you,
it's
about bottlenose dolphins.
Oh, those are kinky motherfuckers.
Yes. And
from what I've heard.
Like I said, from the Queer Ducks and Other Animals book, and this is the chapter on bottlenose dolphins. And the author of this book is Elliot Schrafer. So there are only two sorts of stable long-term relationships with bottlenose dolphin societies: between mothers and their calves, and between males. So this is the gay story that we need right now.
Finally.
Every other relationship, including male-female coupling, just sort of comes and goes. And the thing that's interesting is that there is plenty of great data on dolphin bonding, because our love of dolphins and bonobos means that there's a lot of money out there to research them. So we've known for decades that male friendship is the main structuring element of the dolphin world. 2 or 3 male dolphins will form an alliance that can last their entire lives. They hunt together, travel together, interact with unfamiliar dolphins together, and mate with females together. These male couples, or sometimes thruples, bond for life. Those small groups will join others to make an all-male pod of 4 to 14 male dolphins who will spend decades traveling the world together. I just love this gay life for them, right?
Oh my God.
Dolphins form the most complex non-human society on the planet. That society relies on social bonds that are cemented through male-male sex.
Oh my God.
Since mothers and calves part ways once the calves are grown, these male bonds are the only truly lasting unit in bottlenose dolphin life. With few exceptions, these males all have sex with females too. It's just that their significant lifetime attachment and the majority of their sex is with males.
Wow.
Usually, researchers in the wild look for what they call mounting as a way to add a tick to the sexual activity column of their field journals. But the dolphins are acrobatic, so it's hard to tell exactly who's mounting whom.
They have position guides for dolphins and shit, this is an untapped sex toy market, I feel like. We should really expand our horizons.
Dolphins will mount one another back to belly, back to back, or back to side. They also
back to back
goose one another, which involves placing their beak against the genital area of the recipient and pushing them around. Sounds good, right?
That's exactly what I pictured when you said goose, and then you just defined what I was imagining.
They'll do quote unquote push-ups where one pushes on the genital area of another, lifting them clear out of the water.
They don't show this at SeaWorld.
No. And they'll stroke or rub one another's genitals with their fins.
Fin jobs.
Dolphin sex acts is important, and not just because it represents combinations of male-male, male-female, and female-female. It's also most often non-procreative.
And most often homosexual.
Yes.
So, and that's what's blowing me away about this. It's not just that homosexual behavior also shows up in other species. It's that there is homosexual dominant societies within other species.
Yes.
Okay. So it's not just a natural anomaly. It is the structure of this society.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And also in showing how bonding sex is.
Yes.
These dudes are having sex with each other in the water because it's a bonding, pleasurable experience for them. It's part of their intimate relationship.
It's a social activity.
Sarah.
It's part of their lifetime bond. It's not something that they just engage in for the sake of procreation. It is part of their lifestyle. So the last thing from the book that I'll read: dolphins show that there is a legacy in the natural world of a wide range of uses for sex, only one of which is producing offspring.
Wow. I love that. I love that so much. I do have questions about the female dolphins. So the mother-daughters stay together.
There is information in this chapter about female-female bonding. The female dolphins often form pods together. And sometimes what will happen with the male dolphins is that essentially they bring a female into the group. So whether that's like the male couple or like two sets of male couples, and they all kind of engage in sexual activity. And then the female dolphin leaves to rear her calf. And if it is a male calf, they will separate once the calf is reared. And female dolphins also live in predominantly female pods. It doesn't like the sexual activity amongst the female pods is as active, because there's some stuff in here about like when the male dolphins are young, the amount of sex that they're having is like they're prolific.
Yeah. Wow. So there's kind of like, they just have like these separate lives until like you decide, a female's like, oh, I'm going to go over to the gay club and have the time of my life, hopefully. And then I'll go back and see what my mom's up to, Okay. Wow. Thank you, Sarah. That was, it gave me a sense of normalization beyond what I've experienced before. Wow. That's amazing. Dolphins.
Yeah. I just think that they are such joyful, wonderful creatures. And now I'm going to just smile a little bit bigger every time I see a pod of dolphins traveling by.
You're like, hey.
I am so glad that we had this conversation.
Yeah. And I hope you all learned a few things and that you'll subscribe, especially since this is our second to last episode. Yep. We have a doozy for you for the finale. We have
in like the best possible way.
Yes. Where you have castles coming on.
Yeah. We have a little bit of a queer celebrity joining us for our finale of season 3.
Yes. So subscribe now because we're going to go on a bit of a hiatus between seasons, but we will be back. And so you can stay up to date on everything. And we'll be re-releasing a few episodes and maybe a few fun things sprinkled in there before we come back. And you can also check us out on TikTok and Instagram. Well, TikTok while it lasts at fuckyeahpod, or email us at fyeahpod@gmail.com. Oh, and we have a website.
Yeah, and I think I'm trying to encourage folks to sign up for our newsletter because we don't have an exact return date that we're coming back. So if you want to, and we also have some events that are in the works. So if you're wanting to know about those things, about when we're coming back for season 4, about our live events, getting on our email list is going to be the best way to go. And of course, we will post them on our social medias too. So follow us there and fuck yeah.
Fuck yeah.
Fuck Yeah Podcast is hosted and produced by Robin Jennings and Sarah Tomcheson, aka my mom. Theme music is by She Her Sir. Segments are voiced by Kristen Smith Davis. If you're enjoying the pod, please subscribe and leave us a rating or review. And don't forget to share with a friend. You can email us at fyeahpod@gmail.com or follow us on TikTok or Instagram at fuckyeahpod. Thanks for tuning in.